Have you ever realized too late that someone's hatred for you ran so deep they were willing to destroy everything? My name is Rebecca, and 9 months ago my mother-in-law told me that my miscarriage was nature's way of fixing a terrible mistake, right after she deliberately spilled an entire bottle of Merlot down my ivory wedding gown. When I finally gathered the courage to ask her why she despised me with such intensity, she looked me dead in the eyes, smiled that cold, calculated smile of hers, and whispered, "Because you took what was rightfully mine. You stole my boy." That moment, standing there in my ruined dress with wine dripping onto the pristine white carpet of the hotel ballroom, I should have known. I should have seen the warning signs flashing like emergency beacons. But I was young, in love, and foolishly optimistic that time and patience could heal any wound. I thought I could win her over, prove that I was worthy of her son's love. How incredibly, devastatingly wrong I was. Today, sitting here in my small apartment overlooking Lake Michigan, that woman regrets every single action she took against me. She wishes she had just stayed silent, kept her jealous thoughts locked away in the dark corners of her mind where they belonged. But wishes can't change the past, and regret can't bring back the dead. I always thought I should be worried about other women, you know? Before I met Thomas, my now late husband, I had dated guys who had wandering eyes, who kept their phones face down on tables, who always seemed to have just a friend, who texted at odd hours. With Thomas, I never had those concerns. He was faithful, devoted, transparent in every way. His phone was always unlocked. He talked about our future with certainty and joy. He introduced me to everyone important in his life within the first 3 months of dating. Everyone except his mother. He always had an excuse for that. She was traveling, she wasn't feeling well, she was busy with her charity work. It wasn't until we got engaged that I finally understood why he had been putting off that inevitable meeting. The day we got engaged, Thomas sat me down with this serious expression I'd never seen before. His hands were shaking slightly as he held mine across the table at our favorite Italian restaurant where he'd just proposed an hour earlier. The ring on my finger was still catching the candlelight, sending tiny rainbows across the white tablecloth. "Rebecca," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "there's something I need to tell you about my mother before you meet her." My heart sank. Was she racist, homophobic? Did she have some terrible political views? I ran through every possibility in my mind, trying to prepare myself. "She's very protective of me," he continued, choosing his words carefully. "Ever since my father died when I was 14, she's been intense. She doesn't form attachments to my girlfriends easily." "How intense are we talking?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light despite the knot forming in my stomach. Thomas was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing circles on the back of my hand. "My last serious girlfriend, Melissa, she lasted about 8 months before she couldn't take it anymore. Mum would call her at all hours, show up at her apartment unannounced, find reasons why she wasn't good enough. Melissa finally told me it was either her or my mum, and I chose poorly. I let Melissa go. I remember feeling a chill run down my spine. And before Melissa, 3 others, all ended the same way." His voice was barely above a whisper now. "But you're different, Rebecca. You're strong, and I'm different now too. I won't let her come between us, I promise." Famous last words, as they say. Our first meeting happened 2 weeks later at an upscale restaurant in downtown Chicago. I spent hours getting ready, changing outfits 5 times, practicing conversation topics in the mirror like I was preparing for a job interview. Thomas's mother, Patricia Harrison, arrived exactly on time wearing a cream-colored Chanel suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She was tall and elegant, with silver hair cut in a sleek bob, and the kind of posture that spoke of decades of etiquette training. She looked me up and down with ice-blue eyes, taking in every detail of my appearance with the scrutiny of an art appraiser, examining a painting of questionable authenticity. Then she turned to Thomas without saying a word to me and pulled him into a tight embrace. My darling boy, she cooed, running her hand through his hair like he was still a child. I've missed you terribly. 3 weeks without seeing you is far too long. Thomas gently extracted himself from her grip and put his arm around my waist. Mum, this is Rebecca, the woman I'm going to marry. Patricia turned to me again, and this time she smiled. But it wasn't a warm smile. It was the kind of smile a shark might give a seal before attacking. How lovely, she said, her tone suggesting it was anything but. Thomas has told me so little about you. I'm eager to learn what makes you think you're suitable for my son. The dinner lasted 2 excruciating hours. Patricia asked me questions that seemed innocuous on the surface, but were clearly designed to expose my inadequacies. Where did I go to college? What did my parents do for a living? What were my career aspirations? Each answer I gave was met with a slight raise of her eyebrow or a soft that dripped with disapproval. When I mentioned that my father was a public school teacher and my mother was a nurse, Patricia actually laughed. How quaint, she said. Thomas comes from a long line of physicians and attorneys. His father was a prominent cardiac surgeon, you know. We move in very particular circles. Thomas interjected quickly, clearly embarrassed. Mum, Rebecca is a brilliant architect. She just won a major design competition. Patricia waved her hand dismissively. I'm sure it's very nice, dear. Though I must say, architecture does seem like such an uncertain profession, doesn't it? Not like medicine or law. Those are stable, respectable careers. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. Thomas squeezed my hand under the table, silently begging me to stay calm. I managed to smile and change the subject, asking Patricia about her volunteer work with the Children's Hospital. Oh, it's so rewarding, she said, her face lighting up for the first time that evening. Though, of course, nothing compares to the joy of raising my own son. Thomas was such a wonderful child, so obedient, so devoted to his mother. We've always had a special bond, haven't we, darling? Thomas nodded uncomfortably. Yes, Mom. That's why it's so important that whoever he marries understands that I will always come first in his life, Patricia continued, looking directly at me. A mother's love is irreplaceable. I do hope you won't try to change that dynamic, Rebecca. I should have run right then. I should have grabbed my purse, excused myself, and never looked back. But instead, I squeezed Thomas's hand back and said, Of course not, Patricia. I would never come between a mother and her son. She smiled again, that cold, predatory smile. We'll see. The next 6 months were a carefully orchestrated campaign of psychological warfare. Patricia called Thomas at least twice a day, always at inconvenient times. When we were having dinner, when we were at the movies, when we were in the middle of intimate moments. She always had some urgent matter that only Thomas could help her with. A leaky faucet that couldn't wait until morning. A strange noise in her attic that terrified her. A medical appointment she needed him to drive her to, even though she was perfectly capable of driving herself. And Thomas, bless his heart, always answered, always went running. He was torn between his loyalty to his mother and his love for me, and Patricia knew exactly how to exploit that weakness. She also made a habit of sending Thomas articles about women who had trapped men into marriage, stories about gold diggers and manipulators, always with a little note attached. Just something to think about, darling. Your happiness is all that matters to me. When we sent out our wedding invitations, Patricia called me directly for the first time. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and I was at my drafting table working on a commercial project when my phone rang. Rebecca, it's Patricia, she said without any greeting. We need to discuss this wedding. What about it? I asked, trying to keep my voice pleasant. Well, for starters, the date. June 15th is absolutely unacceptable. That's the anniversary of my late husband's death. How could you be so insensitive? I felt my stomach drop. Thomas had never mentioned that. I'm so sorry, I had no idea. Thomas never said... Of course he didn't, she interrupted sharply. My son is too polite, too considerate of others' feelings. He probably didn't want to hurt your feelings by bringing it up. But I'm telling you now, that date will not work. I took a deep breath. Patricia, we've already booked the venue, sent out invitations, made deposits on caterers and photographers. Changing the date now would cost thousands of dollars we don't have. Then perhaps you should have consulted with me before making such important decisions, she snapped. If you're going to be part of this family, you need to learn to respect its traditions and history. I do respect your family, I said, my patience wearing thin. But this is Thomas's and my wedding, not a family reunion. There was a long, dangerous pause. I see, she said finally, her voice like ice. Well, don't say I didn't warn you. Proceed with your little party on that date if you must, but know that you're starting your marriage by disrespecting your husband's father's memory. I'm sure that will work out wonderfully for you. She hung up before I could respond. That night, when Thomas came home, I told him about the call. His face went pale. June 15th is when my dad died, he asked, clearly confused. That's what your mother said. Thomas pulled out his phone and checked something. Rebecca, my dad died on June 5th, not the 15th. She's lying. We stared at each other, the full weight of Patricia's manipulation settling over us like a heavy blanket. Why would she lie about something like that? I asked, though I already knew the answer. To control us, Thomas said quietly, to make you doubt yourself, to create conflict between us. This is what she does. Thomas, I don't think I can do this, I admitted. Your mother clearly hates me. She's never going to accept me. Maybe we should just... No, he said firmly, pulling me into his arms. No, we're not calling off the wedding. We're not letting her win. Rebecca, I love you. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me. My mother's issues are not your fault, and they're not going to ruin our future together. I wanted to believe him. God, how I wanted to believe him. The wedding day arrived faster than I was ready for. June 15th dawned bright and sunny, with not a cloud in the deep blue Chicago sky. It was perfect weather, the kind of day every bride dreams of. My best friend Hannah helped me into my dress, a stunning ivory gown with delicate lace sleeves and a cathedral train. I felt beautiful, truly beautiful, for the first time in months. The ceremony was at a historic church in Lincoln Park, with the reception scheduled at a beautiful hotel ballroom overlooking the lake. Everything was perfect. My father walked me down the aisle, tears streaming down his face. Thomas stood at the altar looking like he might cry too, his brother Marcus beside him as best man. The church was filled with flowers, white roses and peonies, and the string quartet played Pachelbel's canon beautifully. The officiant began the ceremony with the traditional words, his voice echoing in the high-ceilinged church. We exchanged our vows, our voices steady despite our nerves. I slid the platinum band onto Thomas's finger, and he slid mine onto mine. Then came the moment that still haunts my nightmares. If anyone can show just cause why this couple cannot lawfully be joined together in matrimony, the officiant said, as he was required to by tradition, let them speak now or forever hold their peace. It was supposed to be a formality, a relic of a bygone era. No one actually objects at weddings. No one except Patricia Harrison. Actually, yes, I object. Her voice rang out clear and loud from the third pew. The entire congregation gasped. I felt Thomas's hand tighten around mine. The officiant looked shocked, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. Patricia stood up, elegant in an ivory suit that was almost the same shade as my dress. A deliberate choice, I'm sure. I have more than just cause, she announced to the stunned crowd. This woman is not suitable for my son. She comes from nothing. She has nothing to offer him except her grasping ambitions. Thomas deserves better. He deserves someone from his own world, someone who understands his family's legacy. The church was dead silent. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Thomas's face had gone from pale to red. And furthermore, Patricia continued, clearly enjoying the attention, as Thomas's mother, as the woman who raised him, who sacrificed everything for him after his father died, I should be the one standing beside him today. A mother's love is eternal and unconditional. What can this girl possibly offer that I haven't already given him? The officiant found his voice. Ma'am, that's not... You can't... This is highly irregular. I don't care about your regulations, Patricia said coldly. I'm stating my objection, as is my right. Thomas finally spoke, his voice shaking with fury. Mum, sit down now. Thomas, darling, I'm doing this for you. You'll thank me later when... Sit down, he roared, his voice echoing through the church. I'd never heard Thomas raise his voice before. Neither had anyone else, apparently, because the shock of it actually made Patricia take a step back. You have no right to do this, Thomas continued, his voice lower but no less intense. No right to embarrass Rebecca, to embarrass me, to turn our wedding into your personal stage. If you don't sit down right now and stay silent for the rest of this ceremony, you can leave. Your choice. For a moment, I thought she might actually leave. Patricia stood there, her face flushed with anger and humiliation, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. Then, with as much dignity as she could muster, she sat back down. The officiant cleared his throat awkwardly. Well, hearing no valid objections, we'll continue. The rest of the ceremony passed in a blur. I was shaking so badly that Thomas had to steady me as we exchanged rings. When the officiant finally pronounced us husband and wife, the applause from our guests was thunderous, as if they were trying to make up for the terrible scene they'd just witnessed. At the reception, we had barely finished our first dance when Patricia made her next move. She had been sitting at her assigned table, stone-faced and silent, nursing a glass of wine. I thought maybe the worst was over. Maybe she would just sulk for the rest of the evening and then leave early. I should have known better. Thomas and I were making the rounds, thanking our guests for coming, when I noticed Patricia heading toward the gift table where the champagne fountain had been set up. She was carrying something, her wine glass, still full of deep red Merlot. I didn't understand what was happening until it was too late. She walked right up to me as I was talking to my college roommate, smiled that terrible smile, and then deliberately, slowly, poured the entire glass of wine down the front of my dress. The red liquid spread across the ivory silk like blood, soaking into the delicate lace, running down the full skirt in rivulets that dripped onto the floor. I stood there frozen, unable to process what had just happened. The conversations around us stopped. People stared in horror. Oops, Patricia said, not sounding sorry at all. How clumsy of me. Though really, red suits you better than white anyway, dear. More appropriate given your background. Thomas grabbed his mother's arm. What the hell is wrong with you? She yanked her arm free, her face contorted with rage. Everything is wrong. This whole thing is wrong. You're making the biggest mistake of your life, Thomas, and I won't stand by and watch you ruin yourself for this. Nobody. Hotel security ended up escorting Patricia out of the building while she screamed about how I had corrupted her son, how I was destroying their family, how she would never forgive any of us. It took 3 people to get her out of the ballroom. I spent my wedding reception in the bathroom with Hannah, trying to wash the wine out of my dress with cold water and hand soap. It was ruined, of course. $10,000 worth of custom-made silk and lace, destroyed. But that wasn't what made me cry. It was the realization of what I had just married into, the knowledge that this woman would never, ever accept me. Thomas found me there eventually, sitting on the bathroom floor in my soggy, stained dress, makeup running down my face. He sat down beside me and pulled me into his arms. I'm so sorry, he whispered into my hair. God, Rebecca, I'm so sorry. I should have prevented this. I should have... It's not your fault, I told him, even though part of me wondered if it was. If we had eloped like I'd suggested once, none of this would have happened. We'll get through this, Thomas promised. She'll calm down eventually. She'll have to accept us, and if she doesn't... He trailed off, unable to finish that sentence. Looking back now, I realized that was the moment everything changed. That was the moment Patricia Harrison decided that if she couldn't stop our marriage, she would destroy it, and us, by any means necessary. That night, after the reception finally ended and we made it to our hotel room, Thomas's phone started buzzing. Text after text from his mother. I just hope you're happy, throwing away your family for that woman. Your father would be so disappointed in you. Don't come crawling back to me when this all falls apart. I gave you life, raised you, sacrificed everything, and this is how you repay me. Thomas turned off his phone, but the damage was done. Our wedding night, which should have been joyful and romantic, was spent lying in bed discussing his mother instead. I should have left then. I should have gotten the marriage annulled, cut my losses, and run far away. But I loved Thomas. I truly did. And I believed, naively, that we could overcome this together. What I didn't know was that Patricia Harrison had only just begun her campaign against me. The wine on the dress was nothing compared to what was coming, and by the time I finally understood the true depth of her hatred and obsession, it would be far too late. The honeymoon was supposed to be our escape, 2 weeks in Santorini where we could forget about Patricia and just be newlyweds. We didn't tell her where we were going, didn't give her the hotel name or contact information. For those precious 14 days, we had peace. The whitewashed buildings and blue-domed churches of Greece seemed like another world entirely. We spent our days exploring ancient ruins and our evenings watching spectacular sunsets over the Aegean Sea. Thomas started to relax for the first time in months. The tension that had been permanent in his shoulders since the engagement slowly melted away. He smiled more, laughed easier, and we talked about our future with genuine excitement. "I think we should move," he said one night, as we sat on our private balcony, sharing a bottle of local wine. "Start fresh somewhere your mother doesn't know." I looked at him, surprised. "You'd really do that? Leave Chicago? For you? In a heartbeat," he said, taking my hand. "My firm has offices in Denver, Portland, Seattle. We could pick anywhere. Get away from her constant interference, build a life that's actually ours." It was a beautiful dream. I let myself believe it for those 2 weeks in paradise. But reality came crashing back the moment we landed at O'Hare Airport. Thomas turned his phone back on, and it immediately started exploding with notifications. 73 missed calls from his mother, over 100 text messages, voicemails that ranged from worried, "Thomas, are you okay? Please call me," to angry, "How dare you ignore your mother for 2 weeks?" to manipulative, "I've been having chest pains. The doctor is concerned it might be my heart, but I didn't want to bother you on your honeymoon with your new wife." Thomas listened to them in silence, his jaw getting tighter with each message. By the time we got to baggage claim, he looked exhausted. "I have to call her," he said apologetically. "I know," I replied, trying to be understanding even though resentment was building in my chest. We couldn't even make it through the airport without Patricia inserting herself back into our lives. The phone call lasted 45 minutes. Thomas spent most of it reassuring her that he was fine, that he hadn't meant to hurt her, that of course he still loved her, that she would always be important to him. I sat on our suitcases and watched my husband transform back into Patricia's obedient son, and I felt our honeymoon bubble pop. The months that followed established a pattern. Patricia would create some crisis that required Thomas's immediate attention. Her car wouldn't start, even though she had AAA. She thought she smelled gas in her house, even though the utility company found nothing. She got confused about her medications and needed Thomas to sort them out, even though she'd been managing them fine for years. Each incident pulled him away from me, away from us, and back into her orbit. But I was determined not to let her win. I threw myself into being the perfect wife, thinking that if I could just make Thomas happy enough, he wouldn't miss his mother's constant presence. I cooked his favourite meals, supported his career, made our apartment a warm, welcoming home. And it worked, mostly. When it was just the two of us, we were happy. Then came July and Thomas's birthday. Thomas had always been weird about birthdays. He never wanted to celebrate them, always brushed off my suggestions to do something special. When I asked him about it early in our relationship, he just said birthdays made him uncomfortable and left it at that. I didn't push, respecting his boundaries. But now that we were married, now that we shared a home and a life, I decided things were going to be different. He deserved to feel celebrated, to have people gather in his honor and show him how much he was loved. And maybe, just maybe, a big party surrounded by friends and family would dilute Patricia's influence, remind Thomas that his world didn't begin and end with his mother. So I started planning in secret. Thomas's 32nd birthday was on September 8th, which gave me about 6 weeks to organise everything. I wanted it to be perfect, extravagant even. This would be my way of showing Thomas and his mother that I could take care of him, that I belonged in his life. I set aside nearly $3,000 from my savings, money I'd been putting away for years. I booked a private room at the Sterling Club, an upscale venue in River North. I hired a full catering service specialising in Thomas's favourite foods, Mediterranean cuisine with a modern twist. I arranged for a premium open bar with top-shelf liquor and craft cocktails. I even ordered 3 separate chocolate fountains because Thomas had once mentioned, years ago, that he'd always wanted to try one at a party. The guest list was my next challenge. I needed to invite enough people to make it a true celebration, but I had to be strategic about it. I spent an entire Saturday afternoon with Thomas's phone while he was at his weekly poker game with Marcus, meticulously copying down contact information for everyone who seemed important to him. His colleagues from the architectural firm where he worked, his college friends who were still in the area, his fishing buddies from the charter group he went out with twice a month, his extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins, and of course his mother. I saved that call for last, after I'd successfully gotten enthusiastic yes responses from almost everyone else. I sat at our kitchen table, my phone in one hand and a glass of courage in the other, and dialed Patricia's number. She answered on the first ring. "Hello?" Her voice was cool, formal. "Hi, Patricia, it's Rebecca." I kept my tone bright and friendly, determined to take the high road. "Oh." The single syllable dripped with disappointment. "I thought you were Thomas calling." "No, I'm calling about something exciting," I pushed forward, refusing to let her attitude derail me. "I'm throwing a surprise birthday party for Thomas on September 8th, and I wanted to make sure you could come." Silence, then, "A party?" "Yes, at the Sterling Club. It's a Saturday evening. Cocktail hour starts at 6, dinner at 7. It's going to be really special. I've invited all of his closest friends and family and—" "Who gave you permission to organise a party for my son?" Her voice had gone icy. The question caught me off guard. "Permission? I'm his wife. I don't need—" "You have no idea what Thomas really likes," she cut me off. "You've only known him for, 2 years? I've known him his entire life. I know what makes him truly happy, and a gaudy party full of people throwing fake congratulations at him is not it." I took a deep breath, counting to 5 before responding. "I think Thomas would appreciate being celebrated by the people who care about him. The only person whose opinion matters is mine," Patricia said, her voice rising. "I gave birth to him. I raised him alone after my husband died. Everything Thomas has, everything he is because of me. You're just a phase, a distraction. You'll be gone soon enough." "Patricia—" "No, you listen to me, you presumptuous little girl," she hissed. "You think you can just waltz into our lives and change everything? You think you can replace me?" "I'm not trying to replace anyone. I just want to throw my husband a nice—" "Don't you dare call him that," she shrieked. "He's my son before he's your husband. He belonged to me first, and he'll belong to me long after you're gone." I sat there, stunned by the venom in her voice. This wasn't normal mother-in-law jealousy or territorial behaviour. This was something much darker, much more dangerous. "So you're not coming to the party then?" I managed to say. Patricia laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "Oh, I'll be there, Rebecca. You can count on that. I wouldn't miss it for the world. But don't say I didn't warn you. This little party of yours is going to blow up in your face spectacularly. You're going to regret ever thinking you could pull this off." She hung up before I could respond. I should have cancelled the whole thing right then. I should have listened to the warning bells going off in my head, screaming that inviting Patricia Harrison to anything was like inviting a fox into a henhouse. But I was proud, stubborn, and convinced that I could handle whatever she threw at me. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of preparations. I worked with the caterers to finalize the menu, approved the bar selections, designed custom invitations, arranged for a photographer, picked out the perfect gift for Thomas, a vintage diving watch he'd been eyeing for months, and coordinated with all the guests to make sure they could keep the secret. Marcus, Thomas's younger brother, was my co-conspirator. He helped me come up with a cover story for why Thomas needed to be at the Sterling Club that Saturday evening. We told him there was a work function he needed to attend, something about meeting with a potential new client. Thomas grumbled about having to work on his birthday weekend, but agreed to go. During those weeks, Patricia continued her campaign of harassment, but instead of calling Thomas, she started texting me directly. The messages started coming in at all hours. "You'll never be good enough for him. I know things about Thomas that you'll never understand. He still calls me every night before bed, did you know that? He tells me things he'd never tell you. This party is going to be a disaster. Everyone will see you for the fraud you are. Last chance to call it off before you embarrass yourself." I blocked her number after the 5th day of this, but then she started using different numbers, probably disposable phones she bought just to torment me. I blocked those too. Eventually, she must have run out of numbers because the text stopped, but the silence was almost worse. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was planning something. The day before the party, I went to the Sterling Club to oversee the final preparations. The room looked stunning. Soft amber lighting, elegant table settings with pristine white linens and crystal glassware. Floral arrangements of deep blue and silver, Thomas's favourite colours. The chocolate fountains were set up and tested, each one flowing smoothly with Belgian chocolate. The bar was fully stocked, the playlist was queued up, and the catering team had everything organised. "It's perfect," I told Margot, the event coordinator. "Thank you so much." "It's going to be a wonderful night," she assured me with a warm smile. "You've thought of everything." I wish she had been right. September 8th arrived. It was a beautiful Chicago late summer day, warm but not too hot, with a light breeze coming off the lake. Thomas and I spent the morning together, sleeping in, making breakfast, enjoying the lazy Saturday morning. I gave him his gift early, the diving watch, and his face lit up exactly the way I'd hoped. "Rebecca, this is too much," he said, but I could tell he was thrilled. "I can't believe you remembered I wanted this." "Of course I remembered," I said, kissing him. "You're my husband. I pay attention." He pulled me close. "Thank you. For this, for everything, for putting up with my crazy family. I know it hasn't been easy." "It's worth it," I told him. "You're worth it." Looking back, I'm glad we had that morning together. It was the last truly peaceful moment we would ever have. That afternoon, while Thomas was at the gym, I went to the Sterling Club early to make sure everything was still perfect. I changed into my dress, a deep navy number that Thomas loved, and did my makeup. Marcus had texted me to confirm Thomas was on schedule to arrive at exactly 6 more p.m. The guests started arriving at 5:30. I stood in the lobby, greeting everyone as they came in, directing them to the private room. People were excited, buzzing with energy about the surprise. They all had stories about Thomas, memories they wanted to share. The room filled up quickly with about 60 people, more than I'd even expected. Everyone was positioned strategically, party poppers at the ready, waiting in the dimly lit space. 5:55 p.m. Everyone whispered excitedly, checking the time on their phones. 6 p.m. We heard footsteps in the hallway. Someone counted down from 3. The door opened. But it wasn't Thomas. It was a member of the club staff looking apologetic. "I'm sorry, there's someone in the lobby asking for Rebecca Harrison." My heart sank. Who would be asking for me now? I excused myself and headed to the lobby. Patricia Harrison stood there, dressed in black from head to toe like she was attending a funeral, not a birthday party. Her eyes were red, mascara smudged, and she was clutching her phone like a lifeline. "Patricia, what are you—" "There's been an accident," she said, her voice shaking. "Thomas, the police just called me. They said there's been a terrible accident." The world tilted sideways. "What? No, that can't be right. He's on his way here. He should be here any minute." They found him on Roosevelt Road near Lakefront Trail. His car... Her voice broke convincingly. His car went off the road into the embankment. Rebecca, they said he's dead. The words didn't make sense. They couldn't be real. Thomas was fine. He was healthy. He was a careful driver. He was supposed to be walking through that door right now to surprise and celebration and love. No, I heard myself say. No, that's not possible. You're lying. You're making this up to ruin the party, to... Patricia thrust her phone at me. On the screen was a text from an unknown number. Contact the family of Thomas Harrison. Vehicle accident at Roosevelt and Lakefront Trail. Driver deceased. Chicago PD. My legs gave out. I didn't even realize I was screaming until Marcus came running out of the party room, followed by several other guests. Someone caught me before I hit the floor. Someone else was calling 911. Marcus grabbed Patricia's phone and called the number back. The next hours are fragmented in my memory, like a movie with missing scenes. I remember Marcus confirming with the police that yes, there had been an accident. Yes, Thomas Harrison was dead at the scene. I remember the guests filing out of the party room in shocked silence, some crying, others just staring straight ahead in disbelief. I remember the chocolate fountain still running, the untouched food, the banner that read, "Happy Birthday, Thomas," hanging mockingly above it all. I remember Marcus's girlfriend Olivia taking me home, helping me into bed, sitting with me while I stared at the ceiling. I remember Thomas's sister Claire arriving from Milwaukee, her face swollen from crying. I remember the police coming to take my statement, their voices gentle but persistent. And I remember, very clearly, overhearing Patricia talking to someone on her phone in my kitchen. "Yes, it's just terrible," she was saying, her voice suddenly much stronger than it had been at the club. Such a tragic accident. The police say another car must have knocked him off the road, but they don't know who. These hit-and-run drivers, they're becoming such a problem in this city. Something about her tone made my blood run cold. She didn't sound like a grieving mother. She sounded almost satisfied? No, I was being paranoid, irrational, crazed with grief. She was Thomas's mother. Whatever else she was, whatever problems we had, she loved her son. Didn't she? But then I remembered her threats. "This party is going to blow up in your face. You're going to regret this. Don't say I didn't warn you." I sat up in bed, my mind suddenly sharp, despite the grief crushing my chest. I found my phone and scrolled back through the blocked messages from Patricia, the ones I'd saved before blocking her. There were dozens of them, increasingly unhinged, increasingly threatening. "You're going to wish you never met him. Bad things happen to people who don't know their place. I'll make sure you pay for taking him from me." The police had said another vehicle knocked Thomas off the road, a hit and run. Patricia owned a car. Patricia had been threatening me for weeks. Patricia had been behaving erratically ever since the wedding. Could she have? No, it was impossible. She was unstable, yes, but she wouldn't hurt her own son, would she? I must have made some sound because Olivia came rushing in. "Rebecca, are you okay? Do you need anything?" "The police," I managed to say. "I need to talk to the police, now." Detective Sarah Chen arrived at my apartment at 8 the next morning. She was a woman in her mid-40s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanour that immediately put me at ease, or as at ease as anyone could be the day after their husband died. She sat across from me at my kitchen table, a digital recorder between us, while Marcus and Claire hovered nearby. Patricia was conspicuously absent. She'd left my apartment the previous night claiming she needed to go home and process everything in private. "Mrs. Harrison," Detective Chen began, her voice gentle, "I understand you have information about your husband's accident." I pulled out my phone and showed her the threatening messages from Patricia. All of them. The ones about the party, the ones from before the wedding, everything I had saved. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through them. Detective Chen's expression grew more serious as she read. "These are definitely concerning. Can I have permission to photograph these for our case file?" "Yes, of course, whatever you need." I watched as she carefully documented each message. "There's more. my mother-in-law, she's been unstable since Thomas and I got engaged. She's sabotaged things before, tried to break us up. She objected at our wedding, threw wine on my dress. Thomas had been planning to cut contact with her completely. Marcus stepped forward. It's true, Detective. My mother has always been obsessively attached to Thomas, but it got worse after he started dating Rebecca. She's done some really bizarre things. Like what? Detective Chen asked, pulling out a notebook. She hired a private investigator to follow Rebecca, Marcus said. We found out about it 6 months ago when the guy accidentally showed up at one of our family dinners. He'd been following the wrong car and was confused. Mum admitted she'd hired him to make sure Rebecca wasn't hiding anything. Claire added, she also tried to convince Thomas that Rebecca was only interested in his money, even though Rebecca makes more than he does. She showed him fake bank statements that made it look like Rebecca was in massive debt. We proved they were fraudulent, but Mom just claimed she'd been tricked by an internet scam. Detective Chen wrote everything down. I'm going to need you to come down to the station later today to give a formal statement, all of you. But I want you to know, Mrs. Harrison, that we're taking this very seriously. Based on the traffic camera footage we've recovered, we do believe another vehicle deliberately struck your husband's car. My heart lurched. So it wasn't an accident? No, Ma'am. The other driver came up behind your husband's vehicle and accelerated into him at high speed, causing him to lose control and crash into the embankment. She paused, choosing her words carefully. We're treating this as a homicide investigation. Homicide. The word hung in the air like poison. What kind of vehicle was it? I asked. A light-coloured sedan? Possibly a Toyota Camry or Corolla. The footage isn't clear enough to get a license plate, but we're working with traffic cameras from surrounding areas to track its movements. My mother-in-law drives a dark blue Mercedes, Marcus said. But her neighbour, I think her name is Sandra or maybe Sharon, she just got a new silver Toyota Corolla a few weeks ago. I remember because Mum complained about it at dinner, said it was taking up too much space in their shared driveway. Detective Chen's pen stopped moving. What's your mother's address? Marcus rattled it off, and I could see the wheels turning in Detective Chen's mind. I'll have officers go talk to the neighbour today. Mrs. Harrison, I need to ask, where was your mother-in-law yesterday afternoon, around the time of the accident? I don't know, I admitted. She showed up at the party venue around 6:15, right after we got the news. She said the police had texted her. But the accident happened at approximately 5:45, Detective Chen said, frowning. How would she have known to come to the venue unless she already knew what happened? The implication hit me like a freight train. Oh my God, we'll be bringing your mother-in-law in for questioning. Detective Chen stood up, pocketing her notebook. In the meantime, I need you to be very careful. If she is responsible for this, and she thinks you're building a case against her, she may see you as a threat. Do you have somewhere safe you can stay? Marcus immediately spoke up. She can stay with us. Olivia and I have a spare bedroom. I nodded numbly, my mind still reeling from the revelation. Patricia had known. She'd known Thomas was dead before the police had even officially notified anyone. The only way she could have known was if she had been there. If she had been the one who... No, I couldn't let myself think it yet. Not until we had proof. But I remembered something else. Something that made my stomach turn. Detective, there's one more thing. The day before the accident, Thomas got an email from his mother. She said she needed to meet him urgently, that it was about me, that she had information I needed to know. He deleted it, but it might still be on his laptop or in his trash folder. We'll need access to his computer, Detective Chen said, and his phone if you have it. The police gave me back his personal effects yesterday, I said, my voice breaking. His phone was damaged in the crash, but his laptop is in his office. I led her to Thomas's home office, a small room with a desk, 2 filing cabinets, and bookshelves lined with architecture journals. His laptop sat on the desk, closed, exactly where he'd left it the morning of his death. The sight of it made tears spring to my eyes. He'd never open it again, never send another email, never video chat with me from a work trip. Detective Chen bagged the laptop as evidence. We'll have our tech team go through it. If that email exists, we'll find it. After she left, I packed a bag and moved into Marcus and Olivia's apartment in Wrigleyville. It was a cramped 2-bedroom, but I was grateful for the company. I couldn't bear to be alone in the apartment I'd shared with Thomas, surrounded by reminders of our life together and the party that never happened. The next few days were a blur of police interviews, phone calls from relatives, and making funeral arrangements. Patricia hired a lawyer, a slick, expensive attorney named Bradford Kent, who specialized in criminal defense, which seemed like a massive red flag to everyone, but apparently not to her. When the police tried to question her, she refused to speak without her lawyer present. When they asked to examine her car, she claimed it had been stolen 2 weeks ago and she'd forgotten to report it. When they asked about the threatening messages to me, she said her phone had been hacked. It was all lies, obvious transparent lies, but without hard evidence, the police couldn't charge her with anything. Then, 4 days after Thomas's death, Detective Chen called me with news. "We found the email," she said. "Your husband's IT department was able to recover it from the company server. In it, your mother-in-law asked Thomas to meet her at Roosevelt and Lakefront Trail at 5:30 p.m. on September 8th. She claimed she had proof you were having an affair and wanted to show it to him in person." "That's a lie," I said immediately. "I never cheated on Thomas. I would never—" "We know," Detective Chen assured me. "We've checked your whereabouts, your phone records, everything. There's no evidence of any affair. She made it up to lure him to that location. The location where he died. The location she had specifically chosen. It wasn't a random accident. It was premeditated murder." "That's not all," Detective Chen continued. "We spoke to the neighbor, Sandra Williams. She confirmed that your mother-in-law borrowed her silver Toyota Corolla on September 8th, claiming her Mercedes was making a strange noise, and she needed to run urgent errands. Mrs. Williams got the car back around 7 p.m. that evening. 7 p.m. More than enough time to kill Thomas and make it back, pretending to be shocked and grieving when she showed up at the party venue. The front bumper had damage that wasn't there before," Detective Chen said. "Fresh scratches and a small dent consistent with a vehicle collision. Mrs. Williams hadn't noticed it until we pointed it out. We've impounded the Corolla for forensic analysis." "So you're going to arrest her?" I asked, hope and rage warring in my chest. "We're building the case. The email, the borrowed car, the damage, the threatening messages. It's all adding up." "But your mother-in-law is claiming she went to a pharmacy and grocery store that afternoon. We're checking security footage to confirm or refute her alibi. I expect we'll have enough to make an arrest within the week." I thanked her and hung up, then immediately called Marcus to tell him the news. He was silent for a long moment after I finished. "I can't believe Mum would actually kill him," he said finally, his voice hollow. "I mean, I knew she was controlling and manipulative, but murder, her own son. Maybe she didn't mean to kill him," I offered, though I didn't really believe it. "Maybe she just wanted to scare him, and it went too far." "Does it matter?" Marcus asked bitterly. "Thomas is still dead." He was right. Intent didn't matter when the result was the same. My husband was gone, taken from me by the woman who should have loved him most in the world. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in Marcus and Olivia's guest bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind spinning with questions. Had Patricia planned to kill Thomas all along? Or had it been a spur-of-the-moment decision when he refused to believe her lies about me? Had she felt any remorse? Or was she so consumed by her obsession that she saw his death as justified? Around 3 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You think you've won, but you haven't. The truth always comes out eventually, and when it does, everyone will know what kind of woman you really are." I sat up, my heart racing. It had to be Patricia. Who else would send something like that? I screenshotted the message and forwarded it to Detective Chen, then blocked the number. But I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that Patricia was planning something else. Even with the police closing in, even with the evidence mounting against her, she wasn't done. She was still fighting, still scheming, still determined to destroy me. I just didn't know what her next move would be. The funeral was scheduled for September 15th, exactly 1 week after Thomas's death. I spent days planning it with Marcus and Claire, trying to honour Thomas's memory while also dealing with the nightmare of having his killer potentially attend his own funeral. Patricia's lawyer had advised her not to come, that it would look bad given the investigation. But Patricia, in typical fashion, ignored his advice. She showed up wearing a dramatic black veil, like something out of a Victorian novel, making a huge spectacle of her grief. The service was held at Holy Name Cathedral, a beautiful church in the Gold Coast neighbourhood. Hundreds of people attended. Thomas had been well liked, with friends from every stage of his life. His colleagues from the firm gave touching speeches about his talent and integrity. His fishing buddies shared funny stories about trips they'd taken together. Claire and Marcus both spoke, their voices breaking as they remembered their brother. I spoke too, though I barely remember what I said. Something about Thomas's kindness, his love of terrible dad jokes, his dreams for our future together. I managed to get through it without completely breaking down, though tears streamed down my face the entire time. Patricia didn't speak. She just sat in the front pew, sobbing loudly enough that several people turned to stare. When it came time to view the body, she threw herself across the casket, wailing about her baby boy and how she couldn't live without him. It would have been touching if I didn't know that she was the reason he was in that casket in the first place. After the service, there was a reception at the hotel where Thomas and I had gotten married. I hadn't wanted it there. The memories of our wedding were still too fresh, too painful, but it was one of the few venues that could accommodate the number of guests on short notice. Patricia cornered me in the hallway outside the reception hall. Her veil was pulled back now, and her eyes were red-rimmed and puffy. "We need to talk," she said, grabbing my arm. I jerked away from her touch. "I have nothing to say to you." "You've poisoned everyone against me," she hissed. "The police, Thomas's siblings, his friends. You've made them all think I'm some kind of monster when all I ever did was love my son." "Love?" I couldn't help but laugh, a harsh, bitter sound. "You call what you did love. You manipulated him his entire life. You sabotaged his relationships. You made his death look like an accident so you wouldn't have to face the consequences of what you did. That's not love. That's obsession. That's sickness." Patricia's face contorted with rage. "You're the sick one. You stole him from me. He was supposed to be mine, always mine. We were supposed to take care of each other, just the two of us, like we did after his father died. But then you came along with your pretty face and your career and your plans for the future, and you made him forget about his mother." "He didn't forget about you," I said, my voice shaking. "He tried to maintain a relationship with you despite everything you did. He defended you to me, to his siblings. He felt guilty every time he set a boundary with you. Thomas loved you, Patricia, and you killed him anyway." She slapped me, hard. The sound echoed in the hallway, and several people who had been walking by stopped and stared. Marcus appeared out of nowhere, stepping between us. "Mom, what the hell?" "She's spreading lies about me," Patricia shrieked. "Terrible lies. I would never hurt Thomas, never. He was my entire world." "Then why did you borrow Sandra's car the day he died?" Marcus demanded. "Why did you ask him to meet you at the exact location where he crashed? Why did you show up at the party, knowing he was dead before anyone had officially been notified?" Patricia's face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do," Claire said, joining us. "The police told us everything, Mom. They have the email you sent. They have the car with the damage. They have your threatening messages to Rebecca. They're going to arrest you. It's over." For a moment, Patricia just stood there, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Then she turned and fled, pushing past the gathering crowd and running out of the hotel. "Should we go after her?" I asked. Marcus shook his head. "Let her run. Where's she going to go? The police know where she lives. They have her car, her passport. She's not going anywhere." But as it turned out, Patricia wasn't trying to run away. She was going home to prepare for her final play. 3 days after the funeral, Detective Chen called with news I'd been both hoping for and dreading. "We have enough evidence to make an arrest," she said. "The security footage from the pharmacy your mother-in-law claimed to visit shows she was never there. The grocery store has no record of any purchases on her credit card that day. And forensic analysis of the Toyota Corolla shows paint transfer matching your husband's vehicle. We're going to pick her up this afternoon." I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. Justice was coming, but it wouldn't bring Thomas back. Nothing would. "Thank you," I managed to say. "Will I need to testify?" "Almost certainly, yes, but that won't be for months. For now, you can start to—" She paused, searching for the right words. "Start to process everything. Get some closure." Closure, as if such a thing were possible when your husband was murdered by his own mother. I stayed at Marcus and Olivia's that day, not wanting to be alone when Patricia was arrested. We spent the afternoon in tense silence, waiting for Detective Chen to call and confirm it was done. The call came at 4:47 p.m. "We went to your mother-in-law's house," Detective Chen said, her voice tight. "She's not there. Her neighbor says she left around noon with a suitcase. Mrs. Harrison, we've issued a warrant for her arrest, but until we locate her, I need you to be very careful. Don't go anywhere alone, keep your phone charged, and call 911 immediately if you see her or hear from her." My blood ran cold. Patricia was out there somewhere, desperate and cornered, knowing her life was about to end as she knew it. She had nothing left to lose. "What if she comes after me?" I asked, voicing the fear that had been lurking in the back of my mind since Thomas died. "We have officers patrolling your neighborhood and checking in at your apartment regularly," Detective Chen assured me. "We're also monitoring her credit cards and phone. The moment she uses either, we'll know where she is." I thanked her and hung up, then looked at Marcus and Olivia. They both looked as scared as I felt. "You're staying here as long as you need to," Olivia said firmly. "No arguments." But that night, lying in the guest bed, I felt an overwhelming need to go home. I missed my apartment, my space, my connection to Thomas. I missed sleeping in our bed, seeing his things, feeling close to him. The guest room was nice, but it wasn't mine. Against everyone's advice, I packed up my stuff the next morning and went back to my apartment. I promised Marcus I'd keep my phone charged, that I'd lock all the doors and windows, that I'd call if anything seemed off. He made me promise to call him every few hours just to check in. The apartment felt different when I walked in, empty in a way it never had before. Thomas's presence had filled every corner of this space, and now it was just hollow rooms full of furniture and memories. I walked through slowly, touching his things, his jacket still hanging by the door, his book on the nightstand with a bookmark halfway through, his coffee mug in the sink. I should have washed that mug, put it away, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. It was the last thing he'd used, the last physical evidence that he'd been here, alive, just a week ago. I spent the day trying to distract myself. I worked on a design project that was due the following week. I called my parents, who wanted to fly out from Boston, but I told them not to yet. I avoided the news, knowing they were probably running stories about the manhunt for Patricia Harrison, the mother accused of murdering her own son. Around 8:01 p.m., I decided to take a bath. I needed to relax, to stop jumping at every sound. The apartment was secure, the police were patrolling. Patricia was probably halfway to Canada by now, trying to flee the country. I was wrong. I woke up around 2 a.m. to the sound of breaking glass. My heart immediately started racing, adrenaline flooding my system. That had come from the living room. Someone was in my apartment. I grabbed my phone and locked the bathroom door, my hands shaking so badly I could barely dial 911. 911, what's your emergency? Someone's breaking into my apartment, I whispered, crouching in the bathtub, pulling the shower curtain closed as if it could somehow protect me. I think it's my mother-in-law. She killed my husband and now she's here and— Ma'am, I need you to stay calm. What's your address? I gave it to her, my voice barely audible. Officers are on their way, the dispatcher said. They're 5 minutes out. Stay on the line with me. Don't hang up. Where are you in the apartment? Bathroom, master bathroom. I locked the door. Good, stay there. Don't make any noise. The officers are coming. But then I heard Patricia's voice calling out from the living room. Rebecca, I know you're here. Your car is in the parking garage. Come out and talk to me. I pressed my hand over my mouth to stifle the sob that wanted to escape. The dispatcher was saying something, but I couldn't focus on her words. All I could hear was the sound of footsteps moving through my apartment, getting closer. This is all your fault, you know, Patricia continued, her voice getting louder as she moved down the hallway. If you had just stayed away from Thomas, none of this would have happened. He would still be alive. We would still be together, just the two of us, the way it should have been. The bathroom doorknob rattled. She was right outside. I didn't mean to kill him, she said, and for the first time her voice cracked with emotion. I just wanted to scare him, make him see that meeting you there was dangerous, that you were the problem. But he swerved, and the car rolled, and I saw him go over the embankment. I saw it happen, and I just drove away. She was confessing. I fumbled with my phone, managing to start a voice recording while still staying on the line with 911. Why? I called out, my voice shaking. Why would you do that to your own son? Because I loved him, Patricia shrieked. I loved him more than anyone else ever could, more than you certainly could. I gave him life. I raised him. I sacrificed everything for him. And he was supposed to be grateful, supposed to stay with me, take care of me, love me back. But you came along and poisoned him against me. The doorknob rattled again, harder this time. Then I heard a clicking sound. She was picking the lock. The police are coming, I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. They'll be here any second. I don't care, Patricia said. I've already lost everything. My son is dead because of you. My life is over. But before they take me, I'm going to make sure you understand what it's like to lose everything too. The lock clicked open. The door swung wide. Patricia stood there, her hair dishevelled, her clothes rumpled, her eyes wild. And in her hand was a large kitchen knife, one of my kitchen knives, the blade glinting in the bathroom light. It should have been you, she hissed. You should have died, not my Thomas. She lunged toward the bathtub just as I heard sirens wailing outside. I scrambled backwards, my feet slipping on the porcelain, and somehow managed to dodge to the side. Patricia's momentum carried her forward, and she stumbled, hitting her head on the edge of the bathtub with a sickening crack. The knife clattered to the floor. Blood began pooling under her head. The front door burst open. Chicago PD! In here! I screamed. In the bathroom! 3 officers rushed in, guns drawn. They took in the scene, me cowering in the corner, Patricia unconscious on the floor, blood spreading across the tile. One officer immediately called for an ambulance while another checked Patricia's pulse. The third helped me out of the bathroom, wrapped a blanket around my shoulders, and guided me to the couch. Are you hurt? He asked. I shook my head, unable to speak. My whole body was shaking uncontrollably. Detective Chen arrived shortly after the ambulance left with Patricia. She sat beside me on the couch, her hand on my shoulder. I know this has been traumatic, she said gently, but I need you to tell me everything that happened. I walked her through it. The breaking glass, the 911 call, Patricia's confession, the knife, the fall. I showed her the voice recording I'd managed to capture on my phone. This is excellent, Detective Chen said after listening to it. She admits to killing your husband. This recording, combined with all our other evidence, is going to make the prosecution's case airtight. Is she going to survive? I asked, surprised to find that part of me hoped she would. Not for her sake, but for mine. I wanted her to face trial, to be held accountable, to have to sit in a courtroom and hear all the ways she'd destroyed lives. The EMT said she has a severe concussion and possible skull fracture, but she's stable, Detective Chen said. She'll be taken to the hospital under police guard, and once she's medically cleared, she'll be transferred to county jail. I nodded, relief and exhaustion washing over me in equal measure. Mrs. Harrison, Detective Chen continued, I'm going to have officers stay here tonight, and I strongly suggest you go back to your brother-in-law's place, at least for a few days. This apartment is a crime scene now, and even after we clear it, it might not feel safe for a while. She was right. I never wanted to step foot in this apartment again. Too much had happened here, too much pain. Marcus and Olivia came to pick me up an hour later. They found me still sitting on the couch, wrapped in the blanket, staring at nothing. "Hey," Marcus said softly, sitting beside me. "You're okay. You're safe now." "She really did it," I said, my voice hollow. "She really killed him, and she was going to kill me too." "But she didn't," Olivia said firmly, taking my other side. "You survived, and now she's going to pay for what she did." The next few days were a media circus. The story of the mother who killed her son to keep him from his wife, who then tried to murder the wife, made national headlines. Reporters camped outside Marcus and Olivia's building. My phone wouldn't stop ringing with interview requests. The architectural firm where Thomas had worked released a statement expressing their shock and sadness. Our wedding venue sent flowers with a note saying how sorry they were. Patricia recovered from her head injury and was formally charged with first-degree murder, attempted murder, and a string of other charges I couldn't keep track of. Her lawyer tried to argue that she was mentally unfit to stand trial, that her obsessive behavior indicated serious psychological issues that should be considered. But the judge wasn't buying it. The evidence showed clear premeditation, the fake evidence she'd created, the email luring Thomas to a specific location, the borrowed car. This wasn't a crime of passion or a psychotic break. This was calculated murder. The trial was set for 6 months out. I would have to testify, relive everything again in front of a courtroom full of strangers. The thought made me sick, but I knew I had to do it. For Thomas, for justice. In the meantime, I had to figure out how to live. I gave up the apartment. I couldn't stay there after everything that had happened. Marcus helped me pack up Thomas's things. We donated most of his clothes, kept his important documents and sentimental items. I kept his diving watch, the one I'd given him on his last birthday. I wore it every day, the weight of it on my wrist a constant reminder of what I'd lost. I found a new apartment in a different neighborhood, somewhere with no memories of Thomas or Patricia. It was smaller, cheaper, but it was mine, a clean slate. Work helped. I threw myself into my projects, staying late at the office, taking on extra clients. My colleagues were supportive, but didn't pry, which I appreciated. They let me grieve at my own pace. Marcus and Claire became my lifeline. We had dinner together at least once a week, usually ending with us sharing Thomas stories and looking through old photos. It was painful but cathartic, keeping his memory alive while also learning to live without him. About 2 months after Patricia's arrest, I was cleaning out boxes from the old apartment when I found something that made me stop cold. It was a letter addressed to me in Thomas's handwriting. The postmark showed it had been mailed 3 days before his death, but somehow it had gotten lost in the mail and only just arrived. My hands shook as I opened it. "My dearest Rebecca," it began, "if you're reading this, something has happened to me. I've been worried about my mother's increasingly erratic behavior, and I wanted to make sure you were protected if the worst happened. I've been documenting everything, her threats, her manipulation, her attempts to sabotage our relationship. I've saved emails, recorded phone calls, kept copies of everything. It's all on a flash drive hidden in my desk at home, in the secret compartment under the left drawer. I know this sounds paranoid, but I genuinely believe my mother might try to hurt you if she thinks she's losing me completely. She's not well, Rebecca. She hasn't been well for a long time, probably since my father died. I've tried to get her to seek help, but she refuses. I want you to know that meeting you, marrying you, building a life with you, these have been the happiest years of my existence. You gave me the courage to finally set boundaries with my mother, to put my own happiness first for once. I love you more than words can express. If something has happened to me, please use the evidence I've collected. Don't let my mother hurt anyone else. And please, please find a way to be happy again. You deserve all the happiness in the world. Forever yours, Thomas." I found myself sobbing, clutching the letter to my chest. Even in death, Thomas was trying to protect me. The flash drive he mentioned was currently in evidence with the police. They'd found it when they searched the apartment, and it had become part of their case against Patricia. But this letter, this final message from my husband, was mine to keep. I framed it and hung it in my new apartment, a reminder of the love we'd shared and the sacrifice he'd made to keep me safe. The trial came and went. I testified, as did Marcus, Claire, Sandra the neighbour, and dozens of others whose lives Patricia had touched with her toxicity. The prosecution played the recording of her confession from my bathroom. They showed the evidence from Thomas's flash drive. They proved beyond any reasonable doubt that Patricia Harrison had deliberately murdered her son. The jury took less than 4 hours to convict her on all charges. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. When the judge read the sentence, Patricia finally broke down, sobbing and screaming that she was a victim, that I had ruined everything, that none of this was her fault, but no one was listening anymore. As I walked out of the courtroom that day, with Marcus on one side and Claire on the other, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. It wasn't complete. The grief would never fully go away, and I would always miss Thomas. But the storm was over. Patricia couldn't hurt anyone anymore. A year has passed since Thomas died. I still wear his watch. I still think about him every day. But I've also started to heal, to rebuild, to imagine a future that doesn't revolve around tragedy. I started seeing a therapist who specializes in trauma. I joined a support group for people who've lost spouses to violence. I've even, tentatively, started dating again. Nothing serious, just coffee with nice men who make me laugh and don't come with homicidal mothers-in-law. Thomas's architectural firm established a scholarship in his name for promising architecture students. I help review applications every year, looking for students who share Thomas's passion and talent. Marcus and Claire and I remain close. We celebrate Thomas's birthday together every September, sharing our favourite memories and toasting to the man we all loved and lost. And sometimes, when I'm alone in my apartment, I talk to Thomas. I tell him about my day, about the projects I'm working on, about the life I'm slowly rebuilding. I like to think he can hear me, that wherever he is, he's proud of how I've survived. Patricia writes me letters from prison. I don't read them. I return them unopened. Return to sender, written across the front in bold letters. I'm done letting that woman take up space in my life. She took my husband from me. She took away the future we should have had together. But she didn't destroy me. I'm still here, still standing, still fighting to find joy and purpose and meaning. That, I think, is the best revenge I could possibly have.